I'm Corey Baldwin.
And I'm Dan Searle, and it's time for a new episode of Off the Beaten Path. This is a podcast for basketball coaches living in obscurity, working in obscurity, and even those who have made it out of obscurity.
It's a place for storytelling. Some of those are true. Learning, connecting, reconnecting, food for thought, and my favorite, food for the belly.
That food for the belly will take us all over the country here, but this is a special one for me. Welcoming in Norman Parker, the Georgia Stars. They can call you legend, or they can love you or hate you, but the amount of impact that Norman has had on grassroots basketball for the last 30 plus years is almost immeasurable. And Norman, welcome. Can't wait to hear all your stories and hear how those Stars went from Bartow and Daresville to the national stage. So welcome, Norman.
Glad to be with you, gentlemen. I appreciate you guys having me on, and we'll cover the stories as we know how they developed over the years.
Well, you're the one who knows how they developed. So why don't we go back to the humble beginnings, right? And that name of the Bartow Stars, Bartow County. Yes. Just north of the metro Atlanta area, and your hometown, your home area. So how did it happen? Where did it start? You've been a coach since you've been a kid, and it's carried over, right?
Yeah, after my military days and during college, I'm like most fathers. I had a son, started playing basketball and all the sports actually when he was young, like 5, 6, 7 years old. And I actually kind of got into coaching when he came along. And then I was like a lot of fathers, I took him to practice and felt like he wasn't getting developed or the opportunities that he might need. So I started a team. And we played in the rec center, Bartow County Recreation Department. And I did that for, 10 years or so. And then I had a gentleman come to me, and we were very successful in the rec department, winning district and states and all that. And I had a gentleman come to me and wanted me to coach an AAU team. Well, we put a team together. I went out and recruited 4 players to go with those, and those 4 started, plus his son, Adam, which was a really good player. And I knew that we would end up in Atlanta around College Park playing. And the first year we did that, and we were the Bartow Stars, and that was our first name. And we went down and we competed, and I think finished second in state that year, and actually went to Yakima, Washington for the national championship games. And we went out there and competed, and I think we finished like 20th or 24th. And then we come back the next year, and I had several good players. And I built on that. And now once I found out how the summer basketball really worked, because I had other programs trying to recruit my top 2 or 3 players. I lost 1 or 2 of them. I replaced them. And that next year we went back to the nationals, and I think we finished like 8th that year. We got in the Elite 8. But it just kind of started rolling from there. And I kind of found out and figured out really how all this stuff works in summer basketball, about you had to recruit. And then the second year I went to the Georgia Stars, because I realized Bartow, I just couldn't take Bartow County kids and go compete in the state or national. So I had to go out and recruit. So recruiting is really a big facet of summer basketball. You have to have the right players depending on what level you want to play at. And I always wanted to play at the highest level. So we did that, and was successful. And we continued to build momentum, and, Nike come on board. Now, I started this in 1988. I don't know if I mentioned that to you, but in 89, we went to the Georgia Stars. I named it Georgia Stars, recruited nationally or statewide, not nationally, statewide. And then after that, about 3 years later, I had a gentleman called William Avery, a player called William Avery, that I picked up actually at the state finals in Atlanta. And he went with us. And then we built off from him, D.A. Lane, T.J. Vines, guys like that, that we kind of built a program around at that time, and very successful. played all over the state of Georgia, all over the Southeast, actually, at that time. And then we had George Rablin from Nike came to me one time. He come in Atlanta and watched us play the Celtics. And we had beaten them, and he come up to me and wanted to know if I would join the grassroots program sponsored by Nike. Of course, we were happy to do that because in this business, you need Nike or a shoe company to sponsor and help you, recruiting, small amount financially, but also, it just gives you a platform. And Nike gave us the platform, which that's when the Georgia Stars really exploded. Once we got on that Nike platform.
Absolutely. And the shoe companies in the grassroots area, huge factor. But take a step back, set the scene there at that Georgia AAU state tournament where you got to see William Avery play and then were able to kind of recruit him over to the Stars. Set that scene. Who was running that? And how do you end up then picking up players from some of the other teams that maybe you beat along the way or all of that?
Well, back in that time, Atlanta was the hub, right? And AAU basketball, that definitely was the hub for Georgia in Atlanta. And Coach Dollar actually kind of manage and run the AAU for the state of Georgia. So we always, I built a pretty good relationship with him. And you'd have to qualify. Back then, you had to qualify to play even in the state. And you had to do little regional like tournaments, and you were good enough, you'd get invited to the state. So we were good enough to do that. In my first year, we were playing, and this is when we played the Celtics, and we finished second that year, my first year. And when I saw, we played against William Avery, a team out of Augusta, Georgia, and William was on it. And I think it was 10 or 11. And we had them beat by 2 points, and we fouled him on a 3-point shot. He went to the line and made all 3 of them. And they actually end up beating us. But that was in pool play because they was in our same pool. So first and second advance. And we come all the way back through to the championship game. And then after that, we finished second. And then after that, I decided I was going to recruit him because we earned the right to go to the Nationals.
Right.
In Yakima, Washington. So I went and recruited William. I asked him, would he play with us? And he agreed to, and I picked him and a couple other boys up. And that's where we went out there. And that first year we finished like 20th or 24th. Had really a good tournament in Yakima. And I figured out how this stuff worked, and I enjoyed it. I have a passion for basketball. I love the game. And just like back then, I still have that same burning passion now, except I can give it a little bit more time than I did back then. But the landscape has definitely changed over the years. But yeah, William was a big pickup for us. And again, I kind of figured out how this game was played off the court as far as recruiting. And, you got to put a lot of hard work and effort into it, and you got to identify talent. I've always felt like I had an eye for talent.
Norman, that's
the key.
I was about to ask you that question. The eye for talent. Yes, the recruiting. Yes, the being present. Yes, the passion for basketball. But where did that eye for talent come from? How are you able to say this kid can play? I see it. I feel it.
Yeah, I don't know. Everybody feels like they know talent, but I go a little bit deeper than just the athleticism of a player. I like his body language. I like his court demeanor. And once I talk to him, I like to figure out his attitude, his passion, and his love for the game. Because if you pick up players that don't have a love and a passion for the game, that's willing to work hard, they're determined to be the best they can be, then normally you'll come up a little bit short. So it's always been my goal to try to pick young men to play with the Stars that has great attitudes, good work habits. They want to be successful. And I've got really one rule in our program, and a lot of people kind of look at me and laugh when I say this. And I said, all I want you to do is have a good attitude on and off the court. If they don't have that good attitude, you can't coach them. They won't listen. And they're already think they have arrived, and everybody needs to develop. Every young man needs help along the way, and we just tried to support that with the Georgia Stars program, support these young men and give them that stage to play on. That's against really, really top competition. And the better the competition, the more I like it. I mean, I've grown accustomed to playing against the best players in high school, and it's just a lot of fun, especially when you're successful. And if you're not successful, you just have to work a little bit harder.
Well, take us now back down the Nike road. How all that came about, and what that really meant to you guys.
Well, I wasn't thinking along the lines of shoe companies back then. I was just coaching and having fun coaching these young men and trying to compete and actually trying to win the AAU state of Georgia. And that's back in the early 90s. And then all at once, our team started getting notoriety, not just in the state of Georgia, but in the Southeast. And that's where George Rablin come into play. And Nike at that time was starting a grassroots program. I'm going to say that was in 1992, 1993. And when he asked Georgia Stars, he asked us to come into the inaugural grassroots program, and we accepted that. And then I think it was the following year they decided to do the Peach Jam, which it wasn't the Peach Jam the first year. I think that was in 94, 93, 94. It was called the Peach Basket. And I went down with William Avery and DA and those guys. And I also picked up Max Owens that played at University of North Carolina. Chris Seabrooks played it. He's 6'9", 6'10" kid, played at Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And we went down and competed that first year, and I think we got into the Final Four, the Elite Eight. And that's when it really became fun. I mean, because as Augusta and the Peach Jam is today, it was that popular the first year out of the gate with the Peach Basket. And then the second year,
why was it in Augusta? Why did they pick the Peach Peach Basket, which then became the Peach Jam? Do you know?
I really don't know, except they got a tendency. Nike has a tendency to not play in really big cities. They'll be around a big city like Atlanta, but Augusta. I think when they went down and looked at that facility, Riverview Rec Center. It was almost perfect. It was kind of out away from big cities, plenty of hotels because of the Masters. I think it just accommodated a lot of people, a lot of teams coming in, a lot of fans coming in. And I think it was kind of due to the Masters. Hey, if the Masters can accommodate all the people, then certainly, it can accommodate the Peach Jam. And so they settled in North Augusta, not Augusta, but North Augusta, South Carolina, which is just across the river from Augusta. And man, did they pick a great location. And it's still there today. And it's been going on, I don't know how many years, 20 years, 94, 2004, 2004, 30 years.
30. Yep.
Going on right at 30 years. Yeah. Yeah.
And such a big thing now, TV covers it. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's on with ESPN. That's unbelievable how bigger it got. It, like you said, though, you knew it was good at the beginning. It's always been the best tournament to me as far as a fan.
Yeah, and Nike has done a great job of promoting summer basketball and giving us the platform to play on. And it's all business. I mean, you just don't. You can't just say, "Hey, I'd like to play," with Nike. And now I think it was 2010, they went from grassroots to EYBL, and that's the Elite Youth Basketball Program. And when they did that, they just bumped it up a notch. Better players, better coaching, sound programs that Nike, requires of us. And, we have to meet a tier 1, tier 2 status just to stay relevant with Nike and the platform that they give us. And we have to work extremely hard to do that. Georgia Stars, we're not the largest I think we're the largest program in Georgia per team wise. We average 23 to 25 teams per year. Of course, the mainstay of our program is our elite EYBL teams, 15, 16, and 17. And this year was the 8th grade. They did a junior EYBL team as they widened their platform to more teams, programs, players. They incorporated the junior EYBL. And, we were fortunate enough that our 8th grade team won the Peach Jam, junior EYBL Peach Jam. So, yeah, they continue to grow and develop, but they certainly give us a platform that's unmatched by any other shoe company.
I want to hear more about George Raveling and those, again, early days as your relationships built. And you got to have some great George Raveling stories. He is truly a legend of the game, from the college coaching days to then building grassroots up, and the Sonny Vaqueros and all of those characters, if you will.
But I go all the way back, Dan. I go all the way back to those men, and George Raveling, I have huge respect for. He always was very supportive when he asked us to come into the grassroots program. And we started having director meetings and everything, which he was over that. And he kind of laid the foundation for us and gave us that opportunity. But one of the stories I'll tell you about George, back when Lewis Williams come into the Georgia Stars program, he was an 8th grader. And I was telling, of course, George was wanting to know who the players were in Georgia. And I mentioned, I said, hey, you got to come watch this young man. I said, he's an 8th grader. He's not real big, but I said, he is a special talent. And he said, hey, I'm coming into Atlanta. And he said, let's go out and watch him. And we went out and watched him play. And he was sitting with me and he says, Norman, if you would have told me, now you got to remember, this is when George coached at USC, Southern Cal. And he had just, that job had just ended, and he got with Nike, was hired by Nike and developed this grassroots program. And he looked over at me while I was watching Lewis play, and he said, if you would have told me 10 years ago or 5 years ago that I would be at at an 8th grade game watching a young man play, I'd have told you was crazy. So I kind of laughed at him. And after the game, he kind of punched me and he said, hey, by the way, he said, this young man's going to be special. So he had an eye for talent. And we connected, and I won't never forget that story because, here he was, put his career toward Nike and looking at these young men and giving them a platform to play in that was the highest level for high school players. So I thought that was always real cool. And, George has got all kind of good sayings, and if you know him, and if you ever follow him a little bit, he's got these sayings that it really means a lot if you'll just, dig down and listen to what he's saying. So I always appreciated George Raveling. He's been a big influence on me.
Well, tell us a little more. I know, talking about the Peach Jam, what are some other tournaments that have kind of, big wins along the way that kind of got you to where you are now?
Yeah, I was telling somebody the other day that, we've won the Peach Jam now 4 times at different levels. Our 2015 class 17s won the Peach Jam. And that same year, and we're the only program in Nike that has won. Our 16 won the Peach Jam also, the Sweet 16 Peach Jam. And we did it same year, and we did it back-to-back games in 2015. And we're the only program that has ever accomplished that. We're the first program that, with the inaugural season of the EYBL 2010, our 16s won the Peach Jam. And then this year, we had another kind of a history moment, if you will, in basketball, summer basketball. And that's what I'm talking about. We won the inaugural junior EYBL Peach Jam. So, yeah, we have been kind of a staple. I feel like our program has. We have a lot of good coaches, and, of course, players is about players that has accomplished these goals. But there's not a tournament in the nation that the Georgia Stars hadn't played in and won. And I'll give you, for instance, Houston Kingwood Classic. We won that. several times. Back King James, back in Ohio, up and around Canton, that area, up that way, Akron. We went up and we won the King James tournament. And so we've won just about every major tournament in the country over the years. Over the years, of course, we've been in existence now, but we're going on our 37th year. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I don't know, it's been so many tournaments. I mean, I can look back behind me here, and that we won the Vegas, it's Bigfoot hoops, Las Vegas Classic. We won that tournament a couple of 3 times. So yeah, it's been a great ride, and we're going to continue to push forward and try to put a good product on the floor and help these young men receive those scholarships.
Before we push forward with winning some more scholarships for these guys, let's talk about some of those people back on the wall, and let's go to William Avery and D.A. Lane, a couple of those early names, and then we can work through maybe some of those players and names that people will recognize. But William Avery played at Duke, played in the NBA. How did that relationship, you and William, grow through the years? How did the Duke and other college recruiting pieces fall into place there? Tell us about and William, is he coaching now as he's kind of cycled through all of that?
Yeah, William is a great example of a young man at 10-year-old loving the game of basketball and just really dedicating his life to basketball. And you take him at 10, he beat us in the state tournament by hitting three free throws in a row. And I'm not talking about right with 1 or 2 seconds on the clock. And then I pick him up. Then he led the Georgia Stars all those years, even into the Peach Jam, the Peach Basket and the Peach Jam. But I tell you a story, we also, and I left this tournament out, you talk one of the biggest tournaments back in the day was the Bob Gibbons tournament. And that was played at Cameron, Dean Dome, and then at NC State. And so we played in that every year, and we played in the championship back, and I had Kwame Brown and guys like that. But William Avery, we'd go up there and we'd win that or finish in the Final Four anyway. But William, we were playing at Cameron indoor, and William was a sophomore. He was a sophomore. And we beat, I think, DC Assault or somebody like that, a really good team. Okay, well, William Avery, we were walking out of Cameron Indoor Arena, and Will said, "Hey, Coach, I'd love to go to Duke." And I said, "Well, academically, you got to get caught up." And I said, they may recruit you. So William went on his junior year at Westside. They won state. The following year, his senior year, his academics still were not up to par to go to some place like Duke. So he enrolled at Oak Hill, very successful at Oak Hill. Well, basically, Coach K, when we sat down with Coach K, he said, "Hey, I'll take you, but you got to get academically qualified." So he did that. And then Duke took him. And I think he played a couple of years with Duke. They played in the national championship his junior year. And then he opted into the NBA. So he was really the first Georgia Stars player to go to NBA first round, first pick. Not the first pick, first round. I think his 14th pick. So then after that, he played with the Timberwolves and played 3 or 4 years in the NBA. Then he went overseas, played another 10, 15 years, but he come back. Now, William never got his degree from Duke, but he wanted to coach. So Coach K and him, they worked out a program where he could go to Duke, enroll in school again, and William ended up a couple of 3 years ago, and he got his degree finally. And he's probably about 39 or 40-year-old right now. And now, after he got his degree, he was hired by Duke. So he's an assistant coach at Duke today. So you're talking about a young man from 10-year-old that his career, is pretty daunting, but it just shows you the love and the passion that he has for basketball and willing to coach. And actually, I talked to him last night. He calls me and tells me and asks me about players in Georgia, of course. And, we had probably an hour conversation last night just about players in Georgia, about his career, how things are going at Duke. And, so he's very excited about, what he's doing now. So it's really good to see the alum. There's several of them. You got Let's see. You got Tim Morris is another example of someone, and then you got Kruger. You got Kevin Kruger. You know, that played with the Georgia Stars. So we've had a lot of alumni that now are college coaches, and we got several that are high school coaches like Derek Broom and guys like that. So yeah, it's really good to see our alumni. Once the basketball kind of goes flat, you know, they get into coaching, and it's amazing. They all stay in the basketball arena, and it's really wonderful to see. And they're good young men with families now.
Got to have a good attitude and a passion for the game, and that carries through. It carries through, and here they are staying connected with you, staying connected with the Stars and with the program, and now giving back in their own way. If you look at it that way, right?
Okay, this was on Lewis Williams. Lewis Williams was, you know, he's a special player back in his day, and he's one of the few players that I think he committed to University of Georgia, and then he was drafted in the first round right out of high school. But another thing that I'm extremely proud of, and it's a great trivial question: who was the first player ever come out of high school drafted first round, first pick? And that's Kwame Brown. And Kwame Brown played for the Georgia Stars a couple of 3 years, and you know, that's something that we're extremely proud of. And you talking about pictures, we have a picture of him on the wall up here somewhere, and but you know, it was a great journey with him to see him come out of Brunswick, Georgia, and out of the projects, and achieve, you know, some of the achievements that he did in NBA. I think he played some 12 years, maybe 13 years. But yeah, it's just really good to see these young men excel and play good basketball and end up, you know, having a good career in the sport.
Norman, tell us of the Kwame Brown story on two fronts. One, Brunswick, Georgia, Glenn Academy, across the state, out by the water, right? Corey, your neck of the woods somewhat these days.
Yeah, about 50 miles.
Yep. How do you end up connecting with him and getting him up into the metro Atlanta area for practices and games? And then jump ahead to draft day and tell us about draft day in New York.
Yeah, with Kwame, you know, like I say, Glenn Academy, come out of Glenn Academy, and the coach and I became pretty good friends. But I recruited him, and when he come with the Stars, I'll tell you a story about Kwame. First time we got him up to Atlanta, we went into the Atlanta airport, and I met him, got him a ticket. He came up, and I walked to the airport with him first time because he had never flown before, right? Just street kid, didn't know anything about traveling. And I walked to the airport, and then I went back when you go to the gates, we went back to the gate, and then I said, all right, get us out of here. And I, you know, of course, you got to read the signs and follow, you know, directions. And he did that and got us out, but I thought that was pretty cool. And then a little bit later, we were having dinner, and I was showing him the NBA players in the Atlanta Hawks. And at that time, Mutombo played with them. And I was showing him their salaries, and I said, Kwame, with your size being 6'11", I said, you possibly could be one of these players one day if you'll work hard. And he said, you think so, coach? And I said, yeah, I really believe you can. Well, little did we know, Kwame became just a defensive phenom. I mean, you know, he blocked shots. You couldn't score on him in the paint. He was a rim protector, not ever a great scorer, but he just changed the game. And you know, so next thing I know, you know, he was being drafted. Florida, he had committed to Florida, and Coach Dunman really wanted to keep him. And you know, and he and I talked several times. He's, well, you know, he's not ready for NBA draft. That's when players could go straight out of high school into the NBA. And anyway, Kwame decided, him and his group decided to go ahead and enter the draft. He entered the draft, and lo and behold, he was first player, first round, first pick, right out of high school. Just crazy, right? So we go to New York, and I'm invited. We go to the green room, and he's chosen first pick. So when you do that, you're kind of done for the evening, and you're done early. So we go back to the hotel room. So I order pizza, and we're watching the remainder of the draft. And it wasn't long, I think Shane Battier, this is a good story. Shane Battier comes in and knocks on the door, and he said, and he's got a bottle of champagne. And he said, "Hey, coach," he said, "we're going to go out on the town and celebrate. Can Kwame go with us?" And I said, whoa, wait a minute. Kwame's 18-year-old. No, he can't go out. I said, he can't go out on the town. He said, well, I knew you was going to say that. He said, I got a bottle of champagne. Can we toast at least? And I said, yeah, we'll toast. So we had pizza, we toasted and watched the NBA, rest of the remainder NBA draft. And that was a pretty cool story. I always tell people, I said, but that's an 18-year-old young man right out of high school. Didn't have a clue what he was getting into in NBA. But, you know, again, he made it for 12, 14 years, set himself up for life. And, yeah, we're extremely proud of Kwame Brown.
Well, you know, his story's unreal, but really thinking about it, your story's unreal. You were in the Bartow gym not too long ago, just winning some rec titles. And all of a sudden you're sitting in the green room at the draft with one of your players. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I've been fortunate with William Avery, several guys doing that. And another thing that I'm extremely proud of with the Georgia Stars program, we have coached second generations NBA, and I'm talking about people like Patrick Ewing Jr. And I've been fortunate, you know, to meet Patrick Ewing and Dale Ellis's son Chris played with us. You know, Damian Wilkins, Gerald, Dominique, and even Dominique's son. We're on the third generation of the Wilkins, because we had Damian Wilkins, right, and then we had Isaiah Wilkins. That's at Virginia. And by the way, he's a college coach right now. And then we had Damian's son. He played with us, and we had Dominique's son, Jacob, that played with us. So we've had a lot of you know, great NBA players' son who come in and play with the Georgia Stars. So we're extremely proud of that too.
Well, I think nothing speaks more volumes for a program than getting someone who played for you than wanting their kid to play for you. And then the other one is having guys stay in the family business. You know, you've had so many people that are still in basketball after, you know, being done playing. That says a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the Georgia Stars program, I think it's well respected, and that's always been my goal, to do things the right way, and our program to always be respected, and knowing that we've helped a lot of young men, or we've attempted to help a lot of young men, and I think we've succeeded for the most part in doing that. You know, now we can talk about this day and time where things have changed a little bit, NIL and, you know, some of the things that's going on in college and pro, and, you know, college, I guess, and high school basketball, which has made it more difficult. But, you know, one thing in this business, you got to change, time change. And I think I've been able to do that. A lot of people, you know, I'm still old school in many, many ways, but also I've changed and tried to adjust with the changing of times.
What are some of those changes, Norman? Take us through that progression of the recruiting from back in the day where, hey, we're going to wear Nike and we'll pay for the travel to the tournaments, to now it's NIL and people are jumping from one team to another based on the dollar signs that somebody's providing.
One of the biggest difference to me that I've just noticed, and this has been a gradual change over the years. At one time, it was you recruited the player, mom, dad, single parent, whatever. Okay, he played with Coach Parker, but we have no way to get him to practice. We have no way to get him to the games. You know, we just don't. We're working, and we always said we'll make provisions. We'll try to pick him up. We'll try to help you if you can't bring him to a practice or to a tournament or to a game. And so many times I would have a van and I'd go pick up all the boys, especially when we were going out of town on like a Thursday evening or a Friday morning during the day, and then we'd go play all weekend, and I'd take them home on Sunday. And I tell the story about the Boo Williams tournament back in the mid-90s, where I would leave my job. I'd take off on Friday. I'd take a church van, my church van. I'd borrow it. I'd go to Atlanta, pick up players. I'd go to Columbus, Georgia, pick up a couple of players. Then I would drive down to Macon, pick up a couple of players. Then I'd drive all the way down to Brunswick and pick up a player. And then I'd cut across to Augusta and pick up William and a couple of players. And then we would drive, we'd spend the night on Thursday night, get up Friday morning and drive the rest of the way to Hampton, Virginia. And we'd start playing Friday evening, play Saturday, and we played 2 years back to back. We played in the championship game that particular time. And we'd finish up at 4 or 5 o'clock on Sunday evening. Well, I had to get my van and reverse that trip to come back. And I'd pull into my office at like 7:30, 8 a.m. and I'd go work the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
and deliver the van back to the church Monday evening after I got off of work. So, we did that 2 years in a row. So back then we didn't have any parent engagement. They hey, he can play for you, but you got to handle all this. And that's what we did. Now it's parents are engaged. They're involved. And I don't want to say they're involved too much because, their child is the most important thing on that team. And, I respect that. And we try to coach and manage the team knowing that now. Okay.
Right.
And I think there's just more involvement with their sons now than there was years and years and years ago, which has been an adjustment. And, it's worked well. And now last year or so, this NIL has come into play. And to be honest with you, we're trying our best to stay out of that because really the NIL deal is between the parent and the player in high school. I'm talking high school. It's with the parent and whoever's willing to do an NIL deal with them. They just have to report it to the high school. I mean, that's my understanding. So we don't try to engage in NIL deals. It's just something that I'm doing my best to stay out of because I think every parent, their son, everybody's not a 5-star. Everybody's not a 4-star. And actually, our program is built off of diamonds in the rough. If you want to say, I consider us kind of a blue collar EYBL team, but we have to work for everything we get. And we try to find players that we think are very, very talented and got the right attitudes, and we help develop them to become, to win a scholarship first. That's the first and foremost, to help them win a scholarship of their choice. And then if they're good enough to move on into the league or play pro ball overseas, then, that's kudos to them because, they work hard and they deserve it. But yeah, we try to stay out of that NIL stuff. That's the way I've been approaching it. That may change too in the next year or two, but that right now, that's kind of what, we're trying to deal with that issue.
Now, Norman, walk us through, we've talked about some of the good ones you got. Let's get a good story on maybe somebody you didn't get, maybe a player that you thought was a Georgia star, but ended up not being a Georgia star. Is there one that sticks out in all the years?
Well, I tell you the one that's fresh on my mind. and that was last year with Darian Reed, one of the top players in Georgia. This is last year. One of the top players in Georgia. Developed a great relationship with Coach Douglas. He is a fine young man coach. They had won state the previous year, and Darian had kind of jumped on the scene as being, a 4-star. And we recruited him all during the season. I can't tell you the games we went and watched him play, and actually had a commitment from him to play.
Oh, man.
And
those are the worst.
Yeah, and a week before we started our practice for the summer, the parents, the mother changed their mind and they went in a different direction. So that has always, and I still do today. I can see the young man, and first thing he does comes up, gives me a hug, and we connected. But again, that's when the NIL, all that stuff started taking place. And I just always wanted to coach that young man, have him in the Georgia Stars program, and that didn't happen. But, I do my best not to ever burn any bridges with young men that don't choose Georgia Stars. Because I like to see young men be successful, where they play with the Stars or not. At
Yes,
the
sir.
end of the day, it's about them. It's not about me or the Stars. And we just give them a path to play at a high level if they choose to play with the Georgia Stars. And you know, if you don't have that attitude, I think you probably in it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, I got one more for you. I was kind of interested in who through the years when the state tournament was so big as you talked about earlier, who were some of those teams that became rivals with you? And I know some of them probably don't even exist now, but who are some of those guys that you know maybe you didn't dislike them, but they were teams you were trying to beat and they were trying to beat you?
Well, I'll back up a little bit. When I first got into the AAU scene, coaching and developing the Georgia Stars and building the Georgia Stars, I always knew I had to end up in College Park in the state AAU because that was the big deal back then. There was no shoe companies. This is when we first got started. So I knew I had to go through College Park. And College Park at that time was owned by the Celtics, Atlanta Celtics. Good program. And also Team Georgia, Outlaw.
Correct.
So you had to go through those guys. And they were tough. They were tough. I mean, you know, it took us a few years before we overcome them, but I made a commitment to our program, to myself, that I wouldn't stop it. I wouldn't give it up. We were going to compete with those guys, and we were going to do our best to overtake them and beat them and advance, you know, our desire for this program to grow. And we'll finally accomplish that. But yeah, the Celtics, Team Georgia, and the Georgia Stars, you know, we were the three main program. And now I'm going to fast forward it. Now there's eight programs that's sponsored by shoe companies. Back then, none of us was sponsored by shoe companies.
Man, it's
It all
unbelievable.
kind of happened. The Celtics went with Adidas. We went with Nike. Team Georgia went with Nike for a few years, and then they were out and done. And the only two programs that has been around for these nearly 40 years is the Celtics and Georgia Stars. And we still have good games against each other, competition. I think, you know, we recruit against each other, but I think we all respect each other. And then our game elite back then, it used to be worldwide. And, but, you know, they were another program that was, you know, they were a legitimate program from a competitive standpoint. So it's good basketball. It's good basketball in Georgia. We've had so many good young men to come through Georgia and play with one of those four teams that it's pretty incredible with the talent that we all now, though, I think is watered down because there's so many shoe companies, or there's only 3 or 4 shoe companies that's involved, but we have so many programs at a high level that, you know, we all get 1 or 2 players. So it's hard to beat that William Avery, that Lewis Williams, that Kwame Brown, that Damian Wilkins, that Tony Parker and Marcus Hunt. Build those type teams. It's really tough to do that now. And we accomplished that in 2015 with Wendell Carter, you know, the Robinson kid, Trent Forrest that plays with the Hawks. We were able to accomplish that. It's more difficult now to get these guys to want to play with each other, you know, 4-star, 5 stars at a high school level. But used to, you know, they didn't have as many choices. Now they got a lot of choices.
Easier to jump ship. Hey, you mentioned 40 years, the Celtics and the Stars, right? It's quick to say, but that's a lifetime and a half there of basketball and basketball development at the grassroots level, and the amount of players that have come through the Stars is pretty special. You mentioned all these names that people recognize, right? From the William Averys and D.A. Lanes and Kwame Browns and Lewis Williams. But you talked about the Stars being blue collar. What is one of your most proud moments, people, players that's a name that maybe isn't recognized by the masses, Norman?
Well, I'm going to say this: the proudest moment that I've ever had is when we won the Peach Jam, because that was like winning an NBA championship. I mean, you know, for summer basketball.
Yeah.
So that was probably one of the most rewarding, proudest moments that I've had. And then for our 16s to do it too, you know, same day, same facility, was just absolutely a high that all of us talk about now. So that's probably program wise, and for me, one of the most proudest moments that I've ever had. I don't know. I favor William Avery because he was one of the first people like him, D.A. Lane, T.J. Vines, the Curtis kid, the Adams kid, all those guys. I really favor them because they were one of the first really, really, really good teams that we had, and that competed at the highest level. So, those are two moments that I remember, and now, like I say, we've had so many really good teams. The Tony Parker, the Ralph Sampson Jr. played with us. That team, Marcus Hunt, Tanner Smith. I could go on and on and on, and I leave people out. But we've had so many over the years, it's kind of hard to name every one of them. But man, we've had a lot of great players come through this Georgia Stars program, and that I'm extremely proud of.
Now, all the players, so many, and like we talked earlier, so many are in coaching. And Drew Wilson, you mentioned, and I think it might have blurred out a little bit, so I'll say it, Drew Wilson, so it's on the podcast. But what about some guys that coach the teams? I know you had some knucklehead named Dan Searle coach for a while, but other than the bad ones like him, who are some of the good ones you've had that the coaches? Because you've had so many of those as well.
Well, let me say this, and sometimes when you're doing something like this, you talk about players and you talk about the program. But what makes the program is the coaches, because coaches like a Dan Searles, a coach like Andrew Wilson, that's now a college coach. You take Gil Benjamin, and you take the guys we got now with Keith Winston and Chris Richards and Dema. There's James Kane. There's so many of them. But over the years, we've had so many great coaches come through the program, and that's really what has propelled our program to be, to play at a high level, because you can't do this by yourself, right? So you got to have young men to come in that want to coach, that want to lead young men, coach young men, develop young, and they put a lot of time and effort, and a lot of times put some of their own finances to help these young guys. So yeah, I kudos to all the coaches that has been in the Georgia Stars program for sure.
And there's a little transparency there, as Corey just brought up. I did get to coach with the Norman and the Stars 98, 99, 2000, driving out to Milledgeville looking to pick up Larry Turner, and traversing all over the country, trying to get to the Kingwood Classic or the Boo Williams tournaments of the world. So yeah, quite some memories there, Norman, of those teams and the people that have stayed in the game.
No question. Gerald Riley, you just talked about Milledgeville. Gerald Riley, he went and played at Georgetown and went on and played pro ball for X number of years. Larry Turner, and now Larry Turner has come back. His son played with the Georgia Stars.
Hey.
So yeah. I mean, you just the names just keep rolling in, and and then I remember the stories, and and they had a special team back then. We had 2 7-footers, and that was Kwame Brown and Larry Turner.
Mm-hmm.
We had the Ingram kid that also was from Middlesville. He went to Temple and played 4 years and graduated and come back and coach. So yeah, a lot of successful stories, but again, I think it starts with good athletes that's got great attitudes and the will to win and be successful and work hard. So to me, that was the key. But talking about coaches, we've had so many coaches, man. I don't know, over the years that's come in and out of our program that has just has helped these young men, and they're always appreciated, no doubt about it.
Awesome. Well, let's take us to the lightning round, Dan Searle. Norman, we do a thing here where we ask about 3 or 4 questions apiece. We put the shot clock on, and we kind of go through them a little quicker. But as always, we're good with stories. If you end up breaking out and going a little longer, we're okay with it. We'll reset it. But I'll start us off. I want to know the best arena you played in and the worst, because I know y'all playing a lot of big time places doing AAU, but you also playing some of these gyms that are old church gyms that might not even have the regulation court in it. So I want to hear some good ones on the best and worst.
Well, I will always favor the Peach Jam, Riverview Park. I've always favored that, but one that sticks out in my mind is when we went to Kansas and played at University of Kansas at the Naismith Center. So that's
awesome.
been, I've always, that's been great.
And what would be one of the worst? What would be one of the worst? I know you don't want to kill nobody, but
Oh my
funny
goodness.
way.
And I'm gonna say this. It's probably it's probably out in Pine Log, Georgia. You guys don't even know where it's at, but it's out from Adairsville where I live. We actually used to practice out there, and it was a elementary gym that had been there for like 50 years, and we used to practice out there. Plus, this is back during the early days, Bartow Stars, first couple of years, Georgia Stars, and we actually had a tournament out there. So that's probably the worst facility we ever played in.
I love it. I love it. I know sometimes in AU and older grassroots tournaments, sometimes you can get the bad scorekeepers and referee stories as well, but we'll stay away from those. We'll stay with
Oh, you're talking about the scores that they got the flip scores. They flip it with their hand manually. Yeah, we've done that before too. Yes.
I love it. All right, well, give us all this traveling you do. Let's talk North Augusta and Augusta. That seems to be your favorite. What's your place you're going to eat at yourself? Not necessarily with the team, but you got one meal while you're down at the Peach Jam. Where are you going to go eat?
I like Twin Peaks.
I like it. All right.
And T-bones.
Okay.
And T-bones.
Okay.
It's
what?
It's right there close to the Masters, right off Washington Road, called T-bones. It's really big. It's really big when the Masters come into town.
Okay. And what's somewhere you're going to eat in Bartow? Where are you taking us if we come up and hang out with you in Cartersville area?
Appalachian Grill in Cartersville.
I like it.
You'll love
it.
What are we eating? What are we eating at the Appalachian Grill?
Well, you got the traditional steaks, all the seafoods. I personally like the shrimp. It's really good, but they got great steaks. But yeah, you'll like the atmosphere. It's really neat.
All right. And this has been my question I ask a lot of the coaches, but I think it might even be better coming from you with all the success you've had and with everybody knowing who you are when you walk into a gym. What's the one time when somebody maybe, I like using the term humbled, but they didn't even know who you were, or they mistaken you for someone else, and you kind of said, "Hold on now, I'm Norman Parker. How do you not know who I am?" You had that moment yet?
I don't, because I always try to introduce myself, especially when I'm recruiting or I'm meeting someone new. But I have had some embarrassing moments, and I did this with Coach Dave Henderson. Used to be with Duke back when William Avery and them played. I were at a McDonald All-American game, and I think that particular year Wendell Carter was a McDonald All-American. Him and maybe it was Tony Parker, but I forget which one of our kids was there. But I was in Chicago, and we stayed at Marriott Hotel, and we were all there having dinner, and Dave Henderson was sitting next to us, and he asked me a question, and I said, "Now, who are you?" And he said, "I can't believe, Norman, that you don't remember me." And I said, "I apologize. I know your face. I know who you are, but I can't remember your name." So I've had that moment where it's embarrassing for me because I couldn't remember his name. And I think he got a little bit upset at me because I couldn't remember his name. But it doesn't bother me because I always try to introduce myself. But when you're around a group of people, it's kind of hard to do that. But yeah, we all get in embarrassing moments from time to time. And when I recruit a player, a lot of times you go in and a really good player and you walk in and you start recruiting. They know who the Georgia Stars is, but they don't know Norman Parker. So, I'm founder, the president, whatever, to introduce yourself. So I've had a few of those moments. Yes.
It's awesome. All right, sir, handing it off.
All right, Norman. So moments, I'm going to ask you a couple of these. What is one of those moments? You talk about winning Peach Jam at different age levels, but what is one of those games that you were coaching or you were on the bench as the assistant with the group and you guys made an incredible comeback, or it was a buzzer beater, or the timeout call led to a play design that led to the win? What's in your head from the last 35 years?
King James. We had Travis Leslie. We had Tanner Smith. We had Tony Woods. We had Ralph Sampson Jr. And we had Wesley Witherspoon. We were playing the championship game against King James, and it was their tournament. And this is when LeBron was coming on the scene, and it's his team. They were televised. We in the game against them, and we had a 2-point lead with 30 seconds. They called timeout. They come down, and we said, hey, just let's force them to shoot the three. And and just cut off every drive that we can. Don't let them drive to the basket. So here come a guy. He drove. He kicked it to the left corner, and boom, knocked down a three. Put them up one with 4 seconds on the clock. Both thought was beat. Coach thought was beat, and I jumped up and called timeout. Now I'm assistant coach with him. He's the head coach. I jumped up and called timeout. And he's all, we beat. We shouldn't give them that 3-point, shot and all that. And anyway, we couldn't advance the ball. So we called timeout, and he was pretty distraught. And I said, hey, look, get the ball in. I said, Tanner, you take the ball out. And I said, we're going to cross at half court. And I said, Wesley's going to be open or Travis is going to be open. Get on the ball, try to get it up almost to half court. And I said, guys, you got 4 seconds. You can take it all the way to the basket. And you're going to get fouled or you're going to score. So Wesley caught the ball about half, and he drove. Well, we had them in a crossing pattern, and Travis trailed him. And he went up to shoot the shot and got it blocked, and Travis followed him and caught it in midair and dunked it and won the basketball game.
Oh man,
this was a TV game, all in 4 seconds. So you got to be aware of the time and what you can do and the players you have to accomplish that. But was there a little bit of luck in it, because the guy that actually drove to the basket didn't score, but he laid it up on the rim and got it partially blocked. But the trailer was able to catch the ball and throw it down, and we won that ball game. So that always sticks in my mind.
That's a great one. Those are those images.
And that was a TV game. And LeBron was there.
Yeah,
it was cool. Yeah,
and it was a dunk to win it, right?
Dunk to win it. Travis Leslie, and I say this about Travis. Travis, and see, this is what's different now. We've had as many as 7 pros on a basketball team before. 5 several times, 4 several times, 3 many times. Travis Leslie never started his junior year with the Stars. I talked to him, and I said, hey, we got a lot of talent. Are you okay coming off the bench? He said, Coach, I'm fine. I'll earn my minutes. And 2 times he was MVP in that tournament. 2 times he was MVP his junior year. Of course, he went on to play at University of Georgia and was drafted in the NBA, played with the Clippers, I think. So now young men or parents won't accept that role anymore. And that's why you go to a lot of these tournaments, you only see 8, 7, 8, 9 players sitting on the bench. You won't see 12 anymore. Used to, we carried 12 all the time. And Dan, you remember them days. I mean, it was easy to carry 12. We could carry 15 if we could. We know the logistics. We could work the logistics out in vans and travel and rooms and all that. But yeah, it's now cut down to about 8 because they don't want to share playing time.
Right. And the options of multiple teams now that are out there with the high level players, because people are looking for the spotlight. You talk about the high level players, Norman. Here's the next question. Who did you coach against, your teams went against, that is memorable? I think about my time with the Stars and watching Donnell Harvey with the Celtics, Gerald Wallace with the Alabama Ice, and, out to the Nike Hoop Summit in Portland when Tyson Chandler and Eddie Curry were on the LA team. What are a couple of names there that you're like, man, that kid is an absolute beast, or he destroyed you guys?
Well, back back during the day when we first got it started, I always thought a great matchup with us and the Celtics was William Avery and Glover, Dion Glover.
Oh, that's
That, I won't ever forget those matchups because both those guys really respected each other. And I always thought it was just a super matchup. And then another one that always reminds me is, you remember David Lee with the St. Louis Eagles?
Absolutely.
Had tremendous respect for David Lee. David Lee could play. He was really good. We go all the way back to, not all the way back. We go back to 2015 in the Peach Jam. Jason Tatum.
Okay.
Utmost respect for that young man. And, we ended up beating him in the championship. But that first half, I think he had 25 points or something like that. So we had to finally get Raekwon to switch over him because he's kind of a defense specialist for us, and held him to 4 points the second half. And of course, we went on one pretty handily. But yeah, we had a tremendous amount with Jason Tatum.
All right. My final lightning round here is we talk people, right? You had your own game. You had players you played against. You mentioned Billy Donovan and the Kwame recruiting. Back to Coach K and Avery.
William Avery.
Mm-hmm. Yep, your college coach connections. Who do you look at and say, man, the way they run their program, the way they do their recruiting was just another level, and we all need to learn from them?
Well, I think we as summer coaches, AAU, EYBL, grassroots, however you want to lay it out, I always tried to pattern people that I really respected and admired and liked the way they run their program. And that's always been Duke and Coach K. Okay. Coach K's always been one of the most, humbling people when you sit and talk to him, and he's always the same. Doesn't matter if he was recruiting William Avery, where he got him, he didn't get him. I mean, he always was the same, respects what, we were doing and how we were doing it. But I always tried to pattern the Georgia Stars slightly after them. And a lot of people said, well, why aren't you red and black? Because I really like Georgia. But it was in basketball at that time when I was putting the program together that I admired Coach K, and I didn't even know him. Okay. After I got to know him, I realized, how character he was, how reliable he was, advice that he gave me and, for the program and stuff like that was always appreciated. So, yeah, he was one of my favorite. And I always liked Bobby Crimmins, but I couldn't get him to recruit William Avery. I like Paul Hewitt. I like Dennis Felton. I like Tubby Smith at Georgia when they was at Georgia. I like Coach Smith right now. I mean, there's just so many good coaches that has really paid a lot of respect to the Georgia Stars and the way we manage our program and the athletes that come out. And most of our athletes that come out of Georgia Stars program, college coaches know this. When they recruit them and they land them, they stick. They don't move around too much. They really stick. And again, it goes back to that attitude, work habits, loyalty, which some of that stuff may be going away for various reasons we talked about. But there's most of the college coaches, like Coach Izzo right now, he's got Cohen Carr. I've got to know him more since he's got Cohen, and I really like him. And I love what he said. He said, I want to win one more championship before I retire. I said, good luck, Coach. That's hard to do.
Always competing.
Yes, always competing. Yes.
How about that, Norman? Hey, a couple things people don't know about you. You mentioned one, you're a huge Georgia fan, right? Georgia football is in your blood, and you're a big football guy from Adairsville and Cartersville through college in Georgia and the pros, right?
Well, in my day, I was a better football player and basketball player. And, played in state championship, captain of the team, all that good stuff when you're in high school, right? So, yeah, I love the game of football, and I coached it for 25 years. A lot of people don't know that. That's rec ball and stuff, right? So, yeah, I have a passion for that, and I've always been a fan of Georgia football ever since I was small. And people ask me, well, you like Georgia? But I said, I like Tech basketball, Georgia. I like all the college basketball teams and the coaches. So I respect all of them. But Yeah, I do have a favorite when it comes to college football.
Mm-hmm. And you've coached some NFL guys with the Georgia Stars as well.
I have, and some of the players, Fred Gibson is a good example. You know, he's been there with South Georgia. Fred Gibson, you know, he was him and Kwame Brown. They was about the same time, and you know, he was a two-sport star. He was one of the few players at Georgia that ever played basketball and football at the same time. He did it for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, Fred was a special young man, great athlete. But you know, he went to Georgia, played football, and then I had Quentin Moses, and you know, rest in peace. You know, he played also a little bit of basketball and football at Georgia, and both of them got in the NFL for a few years anyway. Jasper Sanks, a lot of people don't even know who Jasper Sanks is, but he's from Columbus, Georgia, and he was running back for UGA, and he played basketball for the Stars, and he was a special athlete. So yeah, we've had several over the years to play basketball with us, but end up with football scholarships.
I was just gonna say we'd like, you know, to end it up saying anything maybe you didn't get to say, something we didn't ask, or anybody you want to thank or anything like that. We kind of leave it with you before we close it out.
Well, I would just say that the Georgia Star program has blessed me as much as I hope that I've helped young men and parents. And I've always thought the Georgia Stars was more of a vehicle for these athletes that wanted to earn scholarships and hopefully move on to the next level. We know they all can't do that, but it's just been a joy for me to coach these young men, to be affiliated with these young men and help them as they move through their life journeys. And that's really, to me, what it's all about. And you know, it's just been a blessing. I've been able to do that with really good athletes, with good coaches, good men that do it the right way. And, you know, I just appreciate all of them.
Outstanding, Norman. All right. Well, listen, man, great hearing all your stories, catching up with you. You coming off the summer travel ball season, but the work never stops. You got to get out and recruit, man. You got to build the teams for next year.
Hey, it's 12 months a year now. I almost say it's 24/7. It feels like that sometimes because you're always dealing with things, you know, trying to line up for the next year, and certainly recruiting now takes more time. And you know, it's I never believed that it would become as difficult as it is recruiting players and trying to build a product that can compete at the highest level. And that's what we attempt to do every year. And for the most part, I think we've done that.
You and talent identification, you and recruiting, huge respect for the eye you have and the work you put in on the recruiting. And that's how you stay at the top level year in and year out. So good work, good luck, and thanks for sharing, Norman.
Thank you, fellas. Y'all have a good day.
It's great having you on, Norman. I think so many things was covered here, and probably still didn't cover as much as we could have, but really enjoyed hearing the stories, and it's amazing how much of the state you've covered. Yes, you've been all over the nation winning games, but you've done it with all guys all over the state, a true Georgia basketball organization, and it's a program for sure. And then we're just glad we got to hear some of those stories.
Glad I got to be a part of it there for a short period of time with the Georgia Stars. And Corey, this may be one of those where the name dropping, and just because you're telling stories, might have been one of the longest lists we've had on Off the Beaten Path, right?
Most celebrity lists for sure.
Exactly.
Maybe we've had some guys drop more names, but I don't know if anybody's ever dropped more NBA, NFL, Division I coaches, Division I player names than he did. And we lost a little bit. He had a little break. You won't get it on the podcast, but we had to do some editing or whatever, and there may be a couple left out. So if you don't hear your name, he probably mentioned it, and we just didn't get it in there because he did do a good job of mentioning so many guys, so many levels. It was awesome.
It sure was. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for listening. We've enjoyed this conversation. We'll be back with more.
All right. And we're a show for those who want to coach, those who used to coach, those who are coaches, and those who love hearing coaching stories. All right.